Good morning, my friends. It's the OGGM broadcasting live from the aforementioned Fresno, Nevada, from the station located here at Site B, which is not a real place. It's Tuesday. Yesterday, I was very honored and flattered to have my games reviewed over at the Eclectic Goat website, YouTube, about 2 hours worth of them pointing out all the good, bad, and ugly with my games. I was in the chat, so I was able to address some of the questions, but obviously there was some stuff that came up that I couldn't address. So I thought I'd take a moment to thank them for reviewing Vigilantes and Pog Wars and all their input. I've got about 2 pages worth of notes that I took. A lot of stuff I need to change, obviously. A lot of things I need to consider. I wish somebody had done this for me about a year ago. Because it looks like I have to rewrite Pog Wars yet again and decide what direction I'm going to take it. I have to rethink what I'm going to do with Vigilantes. It's suggested that I don't hang my head to the Shadowdark song anymore, and that's something to consider. So, yeah, thank you, Eclectic Goat and the Mysterious Simon, who both admittedly said they weren't really superhero people, weren't really game people, but, you know, I got 2 very smart people taking apart my games in a very friendly way, having a lot of fun. But they came up with questions that I thought I'd answer. The 2 big questions, obviously, are why Shadowdark and why Silly? I mean, I could have hooked my D20 wagon to any system. If you remember, about a year or 2 ago, I made a D20 superhero system using the ORC. So there's 2 reasons the games are the way they are. The most obvious, I've answered this one before, it's a cash grab. I will sell out. I sold out to Shadowdark. I just chose Shadowdark as the system to make Pog Wars 4 and Vigilantes 4 because, 1, Shadowdark was perfect. I couldn't find anything in Shadowdark that I couldn't use. Any idea I threw at Shadowdark, no matter how outrageous, and I come up with some pretty outrageous ideas like Gelatinous Cube Swashbuckler, Shadowdark was able to handle. I had no trouble. So, yeah, that was pretty refreshing to know that any idea I had, Shadowdark could fill without me having to completely change things. So that's 1. 2, I thought the Shadowdark name would help sell my stuff. Shadowdark was huge last year and still kind of huge. So yeah, I hooked my wagon to Kelsey Star because it was a cash grab. I sold out. I knew, or I thought I knew, that it would be a way to get my product in front of more people. But because my product is so niche, it was suggested that maybe following in Shadowdark's footsteps wasn't the best idea because it is too niche. It makes it too niche. When people are looking for a superhero role-playing game, they're not going to look Shadowdark. And when people are looking for whatever it is Pog Wars is, Shadowdark is what they think first, especially since my artwork choices are completely different than the agreed upon Shadowdark artwork. My game, both of them aren't fantasy. I mean, Pog Wars is fantastic. It's, you know, a post-apocalypse with magic, Thunder the Barbarian with goblins. But it's pretty out there, and it's definitely not for everybody. I'm writing product in a niche, and I chose a niche of a niche to write product for, to throw the idea at, can I make Shadowdark superheroes, and can I make a basically Deadlands for Shadowdark? So yeah, if you're wondering why I chose Shadowdark, money. But you did present me with an interesting question, which I hadn't considered yet. And that's something I really do need to consider. Is hooking my wagon to Kelsey Star actually to my detriment? Because I'm not making Shadowdark adventures. I'm not using the Shadowdark art style. I'm making stuff using the Shadowdark system that is for use with, but my stuff's closer to like Victor's stuff with Blacklight. My stuff's closer to like the other stuff that's being made that isn't really Shadowdark. So that's number 1. Number 2 is why is my stuff so fucking silly? Why have I chosen whimsy? Why goblins in the Old West? Why running jokes? Why references to 90s pop culture? Why have the narrator be a crazy pink-haired supervillain or an insane AI? Why did I make these choices? Shadowdark is a dark, grim, serious game filled with dark, grim, serious stuff, even in the artwork. And I chose to go silly. Why? Well, I think you know the answer to that. I say it constantly. But yeah, because role playing is silly, and every role playing scenario, every role playing game is innately silly. It is a silly, ridiculous concept. It is goofy fun. It is, balls to the walls, gonzo action and adventure, as it should be. It's a silly game about goblins with sticks. The idea that a post-apocalypse would happen, that we would survive it, and then we would want to go out and adventure and have wacky Mad Max, Thunder the Barbarian. No. An actual post-apocalypse would probably be closer to The Road than any other apocalypse that we've seen on TV and movies. It would not be a fun place. People would not be like, hey, let's go explore the ruins of the mall and fight giant insects. No, they'd be like, okay, can I make it to the end of the night without dying from radiation poisoning? But nobody wants to role play in the world of The Road. The Road, it's sad. It is a miserable place. We role play because we want to be larger than life heroes. We want to be goofy. We want to do these ridiculous things that we can't do in real life, that only the physics of role playing allow us to do. Real life says, no, you can't do that, dude. What are you thinking? Survive nuclear radiation? Climb up a wall? You can only do shit like that in a movie. Role playing says, go for it. What's the worst thing that can happen? You fail, and then you have to make a new character? So yes, my games are intrinsically over the top silly. And because I just am so tired of grimdark, I wanted to rattle the grimdark mentality of shadowdark. I wanted to prove that there is an amazing system here that does everything I want it to do, and be four color and be larger than life. So that's why my games are whimsical. I'm a whimsical person. My games are whimsical. Fantasy, sci-fi, horror, role-playing is a whimsical, silly place. It is dangerous. It's scary, but it's also ridiculous. All right, goblins are ridiculous, as they should be. And that's the fun, at least for me, and the people I tend to play with. So, yeah. There are other genres being explored in the Shadowdark besides fantasy. There's a couple space games. There's a couple post-apocalypse games. There's a couple other games that are exploring different genres. So it wasn't that unusual for me to make a dark, gritty, pulp action superhero game. They are right. I broke my own rule and put too much information in because I was still trying to capture a specific feel with vigilantes, but also just sort of embrace the goofy. That's the same reason I made my art choices, to be opposite the typical Shadowdark art choices, to use AI when I can, and use clip art and, open source public domain art when I can, and when I chose bright over dark. And yeah, and you know what I feel about the Shadowdark art. I absolutely love the zine 1980s punk rock feel of the art, but I also fucking hate the art. Every time I look at a POD and I think, oh, I can print out this page, and then I look at my printer and then I look at the page and how much blank ink is on the page, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to do that to my printer. I'm not going to print out this page. It would kill my computer. There's a reason why Kelsey's books cost so much, because the printer has to go through so much ink printing them out. I can just see the steam, the smoke coming off of the machine from all the black ink that she goes into her things. Love you, Kelsey. Love the art. But yeah, also hate the art. So I think those were the big questions. There were some questions about why it looked the way it looked and layout and editing, which is sad because I paid an editor to spot all those checks. And all I basically did was cut and paste what that individual had already done. And now I'm looking at it through their eyes and going, yeah, there are a lot of mistakes that I miss, which is sad because I paid somebody a fucking lot of money to fix this. And yeah. Vigilante looks better than Pog Wars because Vigilante was laid out and done by Jim. And he did an amazing job of catching on my mistakes and laying it out and going through Affinity and making it look professional. Jim did some of the layout for Pog Wars. A lot of the art choices were Jim's choice, but the layout on its own. Oh, got a dump truck and a chainsaw. I don't know why Pog Wars ended up looking the way it looked. I don't know if it's something I did, the printer did, Jim did. I don't know. It definitely needs to be fixed. I did run it through Grammarly, but Grammarly can only catch so much. So yeah, my dyslexia, there are a lot of mistakes. I hope in the future I can afford to pay somebody to edit it. Sorry, you guys should buy my game. But all in all, they said some really nice things. I mean, I'm not, you know, were there any things that they asked that I didn't answer? Is the character creation building section too long? She mistook it as an adventure, but it's a supplement. Why did I make so many changes to the basic rules to better emphasize the genres? So yeah, obviously neither of these people they openly said they weren't superhero role-playing game stuffs, but Goat kept saying, you know, she'd play it if somebody else ran it. So that's nice to know. Pog Wars needs a lot of work. It's still a mess. It's still, it's this, you know, idea I'm passionate about creating this ridiculous Route 66 roadside attraction and vaguely Weird West post-apocalypse. But it doesn't work. You know, it didn't work the first time. The second version, the one that you see, is a little bit better, but it still doesn't really work. I think I have to rewrite it one more time. You know, it sucks because I'm always just doing this in a vacuum. I don't have anybody to work with. There is no gaming community here. I reach out to people online all the time, but rarely get an answer. So I'm grateful that Goat and Simon chose to review it. Did answer, you know, she did ask and answer the question of like, why wasn't I asked to go on and answer the questions? And her logic was, well, how often do directors get to sit in when their product's being reviewed by somebody else? And I'm like, well, you know, if given a choice, I think most of them would like to be there instead of find out, you know, secondhand. Because if you've worked in the industry, you know that you are waiting on pins and needles to see those reviews the next day or those weekend numbers, you know, or watch the various websites review your game or your product. Back in the day, before we had websites, growing up in the industry, I know how, you know, heart-wrenching it was for creators to wait to see what the reviews were, wait to see what people thought, you know, about their product. So I assure you that if any of the members of the Hollywood community that I know were invited to come and sit in on a review and they could control their tempers, they would. But yeah, her logic made sense. She was reviewing my product, so having me there might have spoiled the water. I didn't even know she was doing it last night. I just stumbled across the fact and was able to arrange my schedule to sit in and listen. And I got to say, I walked out with very humble, very, wow, I really just messed this shit up. I need to really rethink this. But they both seemed to like vigilantes. And the main thing that they said repeatedly was maybe it was a mistake to hang my product on Kelsey's wall. Maybe Supers doesn't need to be shadowdark. I'd have to change a whole bunch of shit. But maybe it does stand on its own. Maybe Pog Wars with a little work and more of a what do I want this wacky roadside attraction post-apocalypse to be could stand on its own. Yeah. Now, the last question that came up was when I have the whole thing about the list of the different types of apocalypses, but then I have the Pog Wars apocalypse. So it was written to present people. The first half of the book is written to present people with information on every different apocalypse that I could find information on. And then the second half of the book was to present the specific example apocalypse, which is the Pog Wars apocalypse. And it is all being narrated by the AI. The entire game is being narrated by the AI. So it's all written as if he's telling you what the game is and what the rules are and what the world is like and all the different scenarios that happened, that could have happened but didn't happen, and then presenting this is really how the world ended. It was ridiculous. It was a fight over a waffle truck that turned into World War III. So that's something I could have made better, to understand how the fluff and the rules were actually supposed to be the same thing. I'm addressing that in the new version of Vigilantes I'm writing, where every little out of character mention is done in little brackets under the running title of Tag Talks. So every time there's a question, I make the little thing, it's in brackets, it's tag answering your question, which I thought I did with Pog, but I need to change. There's also confusion over why I use Pog. And yeah, well, it's because nobody else is using them. I couldn't use bottle caps because it's already been used, right? Can't use bottle caps. But I like the idea of using a made-up currency. Pogs were just as good as any made-up converses. There's especially with the idea that there is a limited amount, and that's what makes them valuable. You can't really find Pogs laying on the street. You got to go to very specific places. I thought it was whimsical and weird and different. And if you're going to make up a monetary system, using small little plastic discs from a toy that came out in the 90s is as good as any, right? I don't know what people would use as monetary should money become worthless. I think we'd probably still use money for a long time just because that's what we're used to, but it would have an arbitrary value like it does now. But, we would use something that there is a limited supply of. You could use plastic, you could use whatever. I don't know. Will I remove the Pogs as the monetary unit? I don't know. I mean, I could call them Seth Bucks, since, all the shopping is done at Seth's Games and Seth's Gear and Ammo. So that's the only place you can buy anything in my universe. Then, if they're the ones that are producing monetary, they could come up with their own monetary. I don't know. I like Pogs. It's as good as any, but she's right. It was confusing. Sometimes I think the whimsy gets too whimsical, maybe, that I'm making jokes that I appreciate, but then, like they said, maybe other people don't appreciate it because they don't know what you're referencing. And despite the fact I gave page after page after page of references, I don't give a lot of examples. And there's places where they don't know, what are you referring to? What's Seth's, blah, blah, blah. So there's a lot of formatting issues I need to address. There's a lot of editing issues I need to address. Unfortunately, that's a lot of money I don't have. I would love to be able to pay somebody to lay it out for me. But right now I don't, which is why I'm begging you guys to support me. So yeah, check out Eclectic Goat and Simon reviewing my product. Hopefully I answered all the questions that you guys had. If you have any more questions that I missed, let me know. Hopefully I'll make some money over the holidays and maybe be able to get it to a point where I could actually do a Kickstarter, especially with Vigilantes, which I'm in the process of rewriting. They both seem to really appreciate the random tables and the amount of research they do. And I'm like, oh yeah, dude, I assure you that if somebody approached me and said, dude, I just want you to do research for my product, I'd be like, fuck yes, please. Yes. Just pay me to research your product. And you can do all the other work. I don't have to ever make another game. I would rather work for somebody else and be a partner and just get paid to spend my time looking shit up and converting it to the system, but have them do the writing, the spelling, the editing, and I do all the behind the scenes stuff. That would be my dream. I don't want to write this stuff, but I got these ideas and I want to share them with people. And then I find other systems and I'm like, yeah, for the last couple of years, it's been shadowdark. It's been my go-to system. But now I'm looking at Rudiger's Almanac and I'm like, yeah, that's closer to what I like. I really love what I'm seeing with Rudiger's Almanac. If I were to run another fantasy campaign and run Pirate Dinosaur Jungle Island, I would probably use Rudiger's Almanac. It's got the look and the feel that I think best suits my style of play. On the other hand, I haven't had a chance to play test it, and now I'm just babbling. So yeah, links down below if you want to check out the interview. If you have any questions about my systems and why I made the choices and what my plans are in the future, you can post them down below or in the comments section. If you appreciate the nonsense that I do every day, please consider supporting the oggm adventures through the Ko-Fi link down below, or through my links to my product online. All my product is marked down for the holidays, so if you want to pick yourself up a copy of Vigilantes or Pog Wars, you can. The official title is Vigilantes for Shadowdark. It was called Shadowdark Supers. Kelsey said I had to change the name, and I suggested Vigilantes for Shadowdark or Supers for Shadowdark, and for whatever reason, Vigilantes was what the name we all agreed on. So yes, it is a supplement. It is superheroes for Shadowdark, but it could be its own D20 thing. It doesn't have to be linked to Shadowdark. I think level-based supers works, but a lot of people don't, and I understand why they don't. But, you know, only my years of experience allowed me to handle this crisis. That's a line you hear supers say all the time. So, yeah, level-based, experience-based supers, but whatever. Now I'm just babbling, and it's almost lunchtime. So I'll talk to you later. Please support the oggm. Please support the Eclectic Goat. Please support Simon. Thank you, you two, for taking time to go over my nonsense products. And all in all, I felt pretty honored and humbled, and you guys gave me a lot of stuff to chew on. Get it? Chew on, because it's a goat. Get it? Because it's chew on, because it's a goat, and they chew.
Roll the dice and ride the wave. Quest and dragons, the news we crave. Under neon lights we take a stand. Knights and wizards across the land.